Yeah. Who is the speaker of Bhagavad Gita? Who's Krishna? Who's the one who's hearing from Krishna? Arjun. What's the relationship between Arjun and Krishna? Family relationship. What's the family relationship between Arjun? He's looking at Dad. Who is Krishna's father? And from the prison house of Kamsa, his mother and father were? Yeah, Vasudeva and Devaki, right. Vasudeva and Devaki. Vasudeva had a sister. And the sister was Arjuna's mother. Who is the name of Arjuna's mother? The mother of the Pandavas' name was Kunti. So Kunti and Vasudeva were brother and sister. You paying attention? Pay attention. So that means that Krishna and Arjuna were cousins. Krishna and Arjuna were cousins, right? Because Arjun's mother was Kunti and Krishna's father was Vasudeva, and they're brother and sister, so they're cousins. Listen to this. Vasudeva also had a brother. And his brother's name was Devabhaga, and Devabhaga had a son whose name was Uddhava. That means Krishna, Krishna had two cousins. One was Arjuna, and the other was Uddhava. So Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, but Uddhava was so special, when Krishna spoke to Uddhava, it's called Uddhava Gita. Not Bhagavad Gita. Uddhava Gita. That's what Uddhava Gita is. It's found in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And as you can see, hopefully you can see, go full screen here. Look at that, curtain open. Okay, so it's in Dwaraka. Where's Dwaraka? It's where Krishna lived for 100 years. Krishna lived in Dwaraka for 100 years. That's a long time to live in any place. He lived there for 100 years. And while he was, and when the conclusion of his pastimes were about to take place, Uddhava knew. How did he know? Because he's so intimately associated with Krishna, he just knew. Krishna didn't say, I'm going to leave, goodbye. He just knew. So here's the series of events that lead up to Uddhava Gita. In Dwaraka, Narada Muni spent a lot of time in Dwaraka. I mean, he travels, but he spent a lot of time in Dwaraka. Why? Because he loves Krishna. And so when he was visiting in Dwaraka, Vasudeva is Krishna's father, right? Vasudeva invited Narada to come to his home and started asking him about transcendental knowledge. He said, I was so absorbed in my mood of being Krishna's father, I didn't yet inquire from you about transcendental knowledge. So Vasudeva, 2 chapters, presented questions, and Narada provided answers, all about transcendental knowledge. And what's the result of transcendental knowledge? Answer, detachment. Right? Jnana Vairagya. Jnana Vairagya. Jnana Vairagya. It's a setup because that's what happens in Uddhava Gita. Jnana Vairagya. At the end of that discussion with Narada, Vasudeva was in very happy spirit. In the beginning of chapter 6, he decided to have a big festival, a big yajna. And brahmanas from all over were invited. Big yajna was held. The brahmanas were given gifts, as is appropriate for a kshatriya asking brahmanas to perform a yajna, and everyone was happy. And the brahmanas went to a place not far from Dwarka, but not in Dwarka, where they gathered together and they were doing what brahmanas do together. Brahmana Katha. There's discussing topics of Krishna or the Vedas. Then something unfortunate happened. We're still in chapter 6 of Canto 11. The son of Krishna and some other young boys came to make fun of the brahmanas. They offended the brahmanas. You know that story? Samba was the name of the son, and he dressed up like a woman, wearing a sari and covering his head, like a shy lady might do, and he put a lump of iron underneath the sari. And so the other boy spoke, this lady is very shy. She wants to know whether it's going to be a boy or a girl. And the brahmanas knew what was going on. They were making fun of them. They insulted them. They offended them. They said, that entity is going to bring the destruction of the entire Yadu dynasty for having offended the brahmanas. Whoa! The boys understood when the brahmanas make a curse, it's for real. So they went quickly to Dwarka, informed Ugrasena what happened. Ugrasena asked his ministers. The minister decided, take that lump of iron and grind it into a little powder and throw the powder into the sea. So that's what they did. Except for one part of that lump of iron didn't grind. And so they threw that into a sea. A fish swallowed that lump of iron. A fisherman caught the fish. A hunter bought the fish, and when he opened up the fish, he found that lump of iron. He said, fantastic, let me use this lump of iron to make a tip of an arrow. It's that tip of arrow that shot Krishna in the foot, in the heel. And he left the world. You don't die from a heel wound. It may hurt, but you don't die from a heel wound. But that was the pastime. So it became known in Dwarka, the Brahmanas cursed this lump of iron is going to bring the destruction of the Yadu dynasty. Next, still in chapter 6, Canto 11. The demigods appeared. Krishna is in a remote place in Dwarka. They offered their prayers, and they said, you fulfilled your promise. You've destroyed all the demons on this earth planet. If you so desire, you may return to your eternal abode. And off they went. We're still in chapter 6. Krishna considered, I already withdrew the residents of Vrindavan from this world. Now is time for the withdrawing of the residents of Dwarka from this world. The arrangement has been set for the curse of the Yadu dynasty, and there's only one thing I have to do remaining. He just desired, he didn't ring a bell or send a messenger or something. The remaining thing was I want to instruct Uddhava so that A and B, he can go to the ashram of Narayana Rishi in Badrinath and give my association to them because I didn't. So I'm going to give him teachings which he can carry to them, and that way give my association. And 2, he can travel throughout the land and give transcendental knowledge after I've departed. Something like, not the same, but something like what Ram did with Hanuman. He remained behind. So Uddhava, the plan was Uddhava was going to remain behind. And that's what happened. So we're still in chapter 6. Uddhava shows up and sees Krishna, like you see in the image. And he knows Krishna is going to depart. He falls at Krishna's feet and says 2 things. Take me with you. And the second thing is, my capacity to understand you and to know you unobstructed has an obstacle. And the obstacle is my attachment. Remember, knowledge and detachment. I have too much attachment to the temporary, family life, etc., etc. So please give me instructions whereby I can know you unimpeded by anything of this world. That's how chapter 6 ends. Chapter 7 begins. Krishna gives a mini answer. How to become free from detachment, free from attachment, so that you can know him. And Uddhava responds by saying, could you say that again? I didn't quite get it. I mean, he didn't use those words, but that's the essence of what he said. Then Krishna continues chapter 7, chapter 8, and chapter 9, 3 chapters of knowledge and detachment. And he does it by telling a story. The story was a story of an Avaduta Brahmin who long ago met one of their ancestors, King Yadu, because they're in the Yadu dynasty, right? So Yadu was touring and he saw this Avaduta Brahmin and said, wow, how did you become so detached? How did you become like this? Because you're young and you're, you have sensual power and you're very attractive looking, but you're so detached. So how did it happen? And the Avaduta Brahmin says many things, three chapters worth of things. But he says that I learned from 24 gurus. And the 24 gurus are very interesting gurus. Maybe half of them are just elements. It starts with the wind, and then the sky, and the earth, and the oceans. And, he has details of what he learned from each of these gurus. Bumblebees, birds, all kinds of different gurus, trees. Two interesting ones include a young girl with many bangles. He learned from her. He learned from a prostitute. One whole chapter is Pingala. Lessons learned from Pingala. She was a prostitute. But by the association of this very same Avaduta Brahmin, who turns out, our acharyas make it very clear, from Canto 2, Chapter 7, it was Dattatreya. Dattatreya spent one night just sleeping in the yard of this prostitute. No, she lived in the same place where King Janak lived. Where did King Janak live? Mithila, right? Mithila. So she was a prostitute in Mithila. Now, it wasn't during Janaka's time, but that was her profession. And Dattatreya was traveling about here and there. And he spent the night in her yard. And she came out from her house and did some service for a sadhu. And because of the service for a sadhu, she got blessed. And the blessing was she got stood up one night. The man that was supposed to come see her didn't show up. And she waited until midnight. He didn't show up and didn't show up and didn't show up. And then she expressed disgust with her profession and detachment from worldly existence. And through the benefit of that little service that she did for Dattatreya, her knowledge of Krishna and her devotion to Krishna awakened, and she commits herself to a life of devotion to Krishna. Just from that little service to a sadhu. And Dattatreya, or the Avaduta Brahmin, relates all this. And on and on. So, chapter 10 ends. 7, 8, 9 ends. And we're in chapter 11, you see on the screen. So chapter 10, the flow of chapter 10 is Krishna says, so if you want to get to be like this Avadhuta Brahman, here's ABC, what to do, this whole section is knowledge and detachment. One can say Jnana Yoga, or one can say Jnana Mishra Bhakti, because the Bhakti element, except for the Pingala, the prostitute, is just knowledge and detachment, because that's a lot of what Dattatreya taught. And some people have the understanding and receive from Dattatreya the teachings of impersonalism. He didn't specifically teach impersonalism, but many people that are followers, they're worshippers of Dattatreya that see him as a form of Vishnu. He's a partial incarnation of Vishnu, right? What does that mean, partial incarnation? He's one of the three sons of Atri and Anasuya. It's a long story. I want to get to 11th canto, chapter 11. A partial incarnation of Vishnu. So he wasn't just teaching impersonalism, he was teaching knowledge and detachment, that the purpose of which is to free one from the temporary, affinity for the temporary, so that one can have unobstructed knowledge of Krishna. So Krishna describes in a variety of ways what's the result on the negative side, what's the result of fruitive activity. So and then he teaches detachment from fruitive activity. And he explains in some detail, same knowledge as in Bhagavad Gita, but now it's Uddhava Gita, it's graduate study level. What's the result of aspiring for heaven and doing different types of worship so that one can go to heaven? And he says just the same thing, just a fancy version of the same thing. It's all temporary, limited, and no real happiness, no real satisfaction. So don't go for the heavenly realm. Go for knowledge and detachment. And then he starts a little bit, it's just a little bit, moving into the bhakti realm. The real detachment is to be attached to me. And then he describes in various ways what that looks like and how to get there. I'm making it simple. There's a lot of details in between. And then chapter 11 begins. That's where we are. To keeping it simple, what Krishna does is he describes the reason the mind, because Uddhava asks the question at the end of 10 that leads to 11. And it's on the same theme. But, I'm not able to accomplish this knowledge of detachment. Can you help me? And so Krishna, he says some other things. So the reason is the mind. Oh, our dear friend, the mind is tainted with fruitive intention, motive, passion. Fruitive intention, motive, passion, same thing. And when the mind is like that, the mind is restless. And the mind can't stay because the mind is restless. And it's moved by the motive passion or fruitive intention or trying to be the enjoyer of the temporary. Therefore, Krishna says, if you can't fix your mind upon me, then he gives a prescription. This is Dr. Krishna giving a prescription to his patient, Uddhava. Two things. Detached work, karma yoga, right? Bhagavad Gita, karma yoga. Our acharyas call it something a little different. They call it karma phala tyag. Phala means fruit. Be detached from the fruits of your work. Offer such a person, Uddhava, if you're in that category, offer the fruits of your work to me. And the second prescription is, hear about me. Here, and so there's this whole glorification of what happens, like we're doing right now, by hearing topics about Krishna and teachings of Krishna. It means then the mind, the attraction for Krishna is increased, the attraction for matter is decreased. The purpose of that combination, make the mind clear. So the mind can then fix on Krishna and you can know him. But the way to fix your mind on Krishna is through bhakti. So then Uddhava asked another question. Supposing somebody's in this mixed position where their mind is not freed from fruitive intention, what is it that they can offer to you that is acceptable to you? And what are the qualities of a person who has achieved that stage of detachment of offering things to you? Good question. It's very relevant to us, right? Because we're in that not there yet position. We know what the goal is, and we're down here somewhere, and we're somewhere striving to get to the goal. So how do you get to the goal for those I'm not there yet card-carrying members? It's all of us. We're not there yet. And it's okay. Uddhava's asking the questions to help us. Krishna's giving the answers to help us. So Krishna is now in the process of describing to Uddhava what are the characteristics of a pure devotee. What's the characteristics of a devotee, and then what's the characteristics of a pure devotee? Bhagavad Gita, right? Huh? Yeah. Sthita Pragya. Exactly. And then there's a list of so those of you that like Bhagavad Gita, when you get home or sometime, today, you can read Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, text 8 through 12. And there's a list, some number 18, something like that, items of knowledge. And of those 18 items of knowledge, you read the purport, and Prabhupada says one amongst all of them is most important. All the others are derived from that one. And what's that one? Unalloyed devotional service. Mayi chananya yogena bhaktir avyabhicharini. And from that one, that's, in Sanskrit language, that's Swarup Lakshana, or the primary characteristic, and the others are Tatastha, or marginal characteristics. From that one. That's Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13. Some of you like reading Chaitanya Charitamrita. And in Chaitanya Charitamrita, you will find a list written by Krishnadas Kaviraj of 26 qualities of a devotee. Where he drew that list from, he doesn't say, and I don't know, and have not met any scholarly person who knows. It's his realization or whatever. And of those 26, one has that same Swarup Lakshana. What's that one? That's the Swarup Lakshana of all the other 25 qualities. Krishna Eka Sharana. Rupa Goswami mentions this in his writing. He doesn't give the list of 26, but he says that's the primary characteristic of a devotee. I'm mentioning this because it's what's on the screen. It's where this train is going is what's on the screen. And the other 25, Krishnadas Kaviraj indicates, and commentary explains, they're important qualities of a devotee, but they're pursuant to one quality of a devotee. Krishna Eka Sharana. So now we have two Sanskrit terms, Mayi Chananya Yogena and Krishna Eka Sharana. Here's another list. Ready? Canto 7, Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 11. It comes right after chapter 10. And in chapter 10, that's the conclusion of the story of Prahlad Maharaj. And the narrator of Canto 7, Srimad Bhagavatam, is Narada Muni. He's speaking to Yudhisthira Maharaj, and it's right after the Rajasuya Yagya is over. And the question that starts Canto 7, Chapter 1, is responded to through the whole canto in different features. But Yudhisthira says, wow, Shishupal got liberation. How did that happen? He was such a bad person. Exalted persons, great sadhus and tapasvis and yogis, they try for lifetimes and they don't get liberation. That guy got liberation. He was bad. How did he get liberation? Could you please explain? So Narada explains in one chapter the theology of the holy name. Because Shishupal constantly chanted the holy name. In a certain bad way, in scorn and derision, Krishna, Krishna. And that's a continuation of the same teaching of the theology of the holy name from Canto 6, where Ajamila achieved liberation by another kind of namabhas, unintentional. He meant to call his son, who he named Narayan, so he was calling Narayan, and by calling Narayan, the Yamadutas came and rescued him. He became freed from sin just by constantly calling his son's name. It wasn't just at that moment of death. He was always calling his son. He had done so many bad things. It wasn't as bad as Shishupal, but he did many bad things. So the importance is chanting and remembering Krishna through chanting. Smartavya satatam Vishnur vismartavya no jatu chit. Sarve vidhi nishedashur etayor eva kinkara. Nice verse to learn. Kinkara means servant. And all the vidhis and nishedas, the do's and the don'ts of all the Vedas, has one purpose. What's that? Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. Shishupal was always remembering Krishna. And never forgot Krishna. And he got liberation. So, similarly, by hearing about Vishnu, although he was born in a demoniac family, I mean, you can't get much more demoniac than Hiranyakashipu. He was like super demon. Super demon. But he heard about Vishnu from Narada. And after hearing the glories of Prahlad that end in chapter 10 of Canto 7, chapter 11 of Canto 7 opens with Yudhisthira saying, wow, like he did at the beginning of chapter 1. Wow. My duty is to become the king. It's Rajasuya, and I'm going to become the king. And I have to guide the citizens in my kingdom to achieve that. How do I help them to achieve that? Similar question, different, but similar question. Narada answers saying, you have to follow Daivi Varnashram, or the prescribed duties. Think of what Krishna just said to Uddhava before this section. Perform duties and offer the results to Krishna. What's the purpose? Again, it's to cleanse the mind, because the mind is colored. Karmatmaka yena sharira bandha, Rishabdev taught his sons. The mind is colored. When the mind is colored, you can't see things properly. So to see things properly, you have to make the mind not colored. To be able to do that, you have to perform activities without attachment to the fruit of those activities and offer the fruit to Krishna. So that's Narada's answer in Canto 7, Chapter 11. And we're going to get to this really quickly. I'm just painting a picture where this is not a new teaching. So if it's repeated so many times, it must be important. It's important. So Narada says, Daivi Varnashram. But before you can do, because Daivi Varnashram can potentially lead one to the kind of bhakti that Prahlad exhibited. Not a guarantee, but it's the path. But before you can do Daivi Varnashram, you have to be a human being. Now we have some people walking around this planet Earth that have 2 legs, but they're not human. Because they're living like animals. So how to live like a human being? And he gives a long list of qualities of a human. There's 30 qualities, 9 of which are the 9 processes of bhakti. But humans, anyway. So there's 21 qualities that are just being a civilized being. And compare those qualities to what you find in Bhagavad Gita chapter 13 and what you find in Krishnadas Kaviraj's list of the qualities of devotee. You find a lot of match. It's not a one-to-one everything, but it's a lot of match. And now these verses, Krishna is giving, he's answering Uddhava's question. What are the qualities of a devotee? And then in text 32, it's the qualities of a pure devotee. Not yet pure and pure. The devotee, that's not yet pure, that's us. And then pure, that's hopefully where we're aiming for. It's so we know what the goal looks like. We're not, we're in the, I've been using this phrase lately, we're card-carrying members of I'm Not There Yet Club. Sadhana Bhakti. Because people ask, I know what to do, but, somehow I don't always do what I'm supposed to do, what to do. Or I go up and then I find I'm back down again, go up and then I'm back down again and up. It's unsteady Bhakti, how to become steady. It's standard stuff. So it's relevant instruction. Because Krishna's, his intention is to answer Uddhava's question, how to get free from this undue attachment. So knowledge is a beginning, but it's not sufficient. We all know. It's a good beginning, but you go up. We're conditioned. It's the mind. The modes of nature acting on the mind. We start thinking of stuff instead of Krishna and Krishna Bhakti and serving him favorably and all those, chanting fully attentively, and you're getting restless, right? Understandable. This is just philosophy anyways. I'll try to remember to tell another story to keep you enlivened and not restless. Okay. But let me move forward. So it's a nice long list. It's a long list. And so far out of the list of 30, I covered 6 of 30. Oh, I picked the wrong folder. Not good. So I'm going to go to I'm going to remove this image from the screen. I just grabbed the wrong folder. We're in Vrindavan now. And okay. Here's Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's purport to these verses. In the first 3 verses, the 28 qualities of a pure devotee are described. Among them, the 17th quality, Krishnaika Sharana, or in broken up, it's Krishna Eka Sharana, which is what is found in Krishnadas Kaviraja's list, is the most important. And the other 27 are secondary. Now, here's a question. Wait a minute. Krishnadas Kaviraj has 26, and Krishna's got 28. Which is it? Answer. They're both right. It's just different models, describing in a different way. And it's perfectly okay, don't be worried. Just like, for example, in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, there's a description of 8 material energies. We all know those 8. And then we go to chapter 13 and we find 24. A question, which is it, 8 or 24? And the answer is they're both right. It's just a different model describing the same thing. Get used to it, Prabhos. It's not always if this is right, then that's got to be wrong. There can be multiple rights. And how you understand what's right is the authority that it's coming from. Right there in Bhagavad Gita, it's 2 different sections of the same Bhagavad Gita with different models. Or Kapila's model is 24. Anyway. So the first, Kripalu. This is not necessarily sequential. What does Kripalu mean? A devotee cannot tolerate seeing the world merged in ignorance and suffering the whiplashes of Maya. Therefore, he busily engages in distributing Krishna consciousness and is called Kripalu, or merciful. Sounds like Prabhupada, right? Doesn't it? Akrita droha, number 2. Even if someone tries to harm a devotee, he does not try to retaliate. Doesn't mean they don't do anything, but they don't try to retaliate. Very important lesson from the Dhruva Maharaj story. It comes 4 times, and that's that Canto 4 section. Respond, don't retaliate, or don't lash back. There's a whole paragraph I'm not going to read. Okay, so titikshu is different. We know what titikshu is, same as titiksha from Bhagavad Gita. Tolerate. Tang titiksha swabharata. A devotee tolerates the offenses of others. He is detached from the material body, and so he forgives the obnoxious behavior of those who cannot appreciate the value of a devotee of the Lord. Okay, so akrita droha, you don't retaliate. You respond, but you don't retaliate. Titikshu, you tolerate. Satya nishtha. What does satya mean? Truth. What does nishtha mean? Faith. Satya nishtha. Faith in the truth. Satya nishtha. A devotee always remains fixed in the truth. He knows very well that he is the eternal servant of the Lord, and thus does not waste his time by engaging in useless material activities. Satya nishtha. Asuya. Asuya. Non-envious. Non-envious. Devotee is never envious. He knows that this world is a kind of phantasmagoria, so he never envies someone in any material condition. Therefore, he never unnecessarily criticizes others or causes any kind of disturbance. Samadarshi. You know that one. Pandita Samadarshana. A devotee has equal vision. See the similarity between Bhagavad Gita and Uddhava Gita. His goal is to attain the eternal Supreme Personality of Godhead, and so he is not elated or disturbed by the temporary happy or miserable conditions of this world. For him, all temporary material conditions are the same. Now this is a really nice one. Sarva para upakara. Sarva means all, and para upakara means acting for the satisfaction of others. Sarva upakara. The devotee is a benefactor of all living entities. Neglecting one's own interest and working for the satisfaction of others is called paropakara. What's the opposite? Where your business is giving trouble to others. I know some people like that. They derive happiness. They rub their hands together and click their heels by bringing happiness to others, misery to others. Devotional service to Lord Krishna is the perfectional stage of welfare work. Because Lord Krishna is the supreme controller of everyone's happiness and distress, foolish persons, under the influence of false egotism, consider themselves to be the benefactors of others, perform materialistic welfare work rather than attending to the eternal happiness of others. Because a devotee remains pure and engages in missionary activities, he is everyone's best friend. You ready for a story? Ask your father to show you the little video presentation on the giving tree. The giving tree. Ask him. If you don't remember that name, he'll remember the name. The Giving Tree. It's a children's story by Shel Silverstein. Once upon a time, there was a tree. And the tree was visited every day by a little boy. And they would do things together and this and that and this and that. So the giving tree just was giving until the end of that little boy, he became an old man. And the tree had given everything. There was nothing left to give. But still, the boy was not happy. Although he gave everything, he didn't give spiritual. So when you're involved in the process of giving to others, don't leave out the spiritual. And even if you miss some of the other material, don't forget the spiritual. Okay? Sarva para upakara. Quality of a devotee. Then, vasana varjita vichara parayana. Vichara parayana. So what's vasana mean? Vasana. Means what? Even more specifically, it's a pervasive tendency for something. Like I may have a flickering desire for, I don't know what. But supposing it's like, I can't think of anything else but that's something desire. That's a vasana. A deeply ingrained tendency towards something that's temporary. That's vasana. Vasana varjita. Vichara parayana. 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 Narayana parayana. Vasudeva parayana. So a deep tendency towards transcendence. So vasana varjita. A devotee has no material desires. Those who have given up the service of Krishna maintain a desire, this is a vasana, to become the master of all they survey. They may have the favorite part of all they survey, and they want to be master of that part of what they survey. Thus, the conditioned soul is busily engaged in trying to lord it over material nature, although the Lord himself is the actual enjoyer. Ordinary persons see all material things as object for their personal gratification, and thus try to acquire or control them. So now, let's go back to what's being asked in chapter 6, that so far, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Guess what? It's important to see properly, and this is what seeing properly looks like. The other was learning lessons of detachment, and this is what seeing with attachment to Krishna and detachment from matter looks like. It's Vasudeva Parayana or Narayana Parayana, and it's Vasana Varjita. These are the qualifications of a devotee. But it doesn't happen like, okay, what's next? No. The bhakti process cleanses that vasana and awakens the Narayana Parayana tendency, or Vasudeva Parayana tendency. Okay, that's 8 of 28. I don't think I'm going to do the whole list. 9, Danta. A devotee is naturally repelled by sinful activities and controls his senses by dedicating all his acts to Krishna. Mridu. A devotee is gentle. That's number 10. Conditioned souls invariably consider others as friends or enemies, and they justify cruel behavior meted out to their opponents. There are certain personalities in the political field that are examples of the opposite of Mridu. They're the friends-enemy people. And no provocation at all. They start bashing people. You're an enemy. Let me bash you. A devotee never considers others as his enemies, and so never indulges in the tendency to take pleasure in the suffering of others. Now, it's not that this is a new idea, or say it the other way. This idea is expressed over and over and over and over and over. It's there at least 4 times in Prahlad's teachings, to his classmates, to his teachers, and twice to Hiranyakashipu. And, they don't get it because they're thinking friends and enemies. And where does that come from? Where does that arise from? Well, it's part of duality, and duality arises from false ego, and false ego arises from turning your attention away from Krishna. Mridu, a devotee is gentle. I just came across this in in the chapter 15 of Canto 10, we're reading in the evening times the Dhenukasura story. And after Dhenukasura is killed, the coward boys go back to Vrindavan singing songs about Krishna. Oh, he did this, he did that, and the denizens of heaven are showering flowers. And the elders go to the edge of the Vrindavan village to greet Krishna, who comes back, and they're praising Krishna. And Krishna is just very, after having killed the terrible demon and his cohorts, he's just very gentle, and he's very gently and kindly accepting the words of his friends because they love him and he loves them, and it's just a reciprocation of love. So it's commented upon. This is where in this pastime, he's showing his power. He's also showing his gentleness. Okay, so now I'm going to go, I think. It disappeared. We're going to go back to the PowerPoint and show you some nice images. There's a devotee that likes to, they're very creative with graphics. And so, there we are. They've creatively made some graphic design in the background. And here's one for the messages here. The Supreme Personality Godhead said, O Uddhava, a saintly person is merciful and never injures others. Even if others are aggressive, he is tolerant and forgiving toward all living entities. Next, his strength and mercy, and meaning in life come from the truth itself. He is freed from envy and jealousy, and his mind is equal in material happiness and distress. Of course, that's Maharaj Ambarish being undistressed when Durvasa Muni was trying to kill him, and so forth. His intelligence is never bewildered by material desires, and he has controlled his senses. The image is in this upper left of that painting, that Chitraketu descending in his Vimana to visit the assembly of sages that are on Mount Kailash. And there's this exchange with Lord Shiva that Parvati misunderstands, and she curses him. But he exhibited control of his senses, as did Lord Shiva. That was actually what Chitraketu was remarking. And if you look closely in the lower left corner, you see Narada Muni, and next to him is Vyasadeva. And so there's not just like those two, Shiva and Parvati. There's a whole assembly of sages hearing from Lord Shiva. A saintly person is thoughtful and accepts me as his only shelter. He is expert in reviving the Krishna consciousness of others, and therefore never cheats anyone. Rather, he is a well-wishing friend to all, being most merciful. And of course, Prahlad is a wonderful example. This is the last image. Having taken complete shelter, this is from the final section. This is the pure devotee. Having taken complete shelter at my lotus feet, however, a saintly person ultimately renounces such ordinary religious duties and worships me alone. He is thus considered to be the best among all living entities. So what should we do with all of this understanding? What's the purpose of this hearing? It's in the category of the three, Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojana. It's the middle one. It's the process of bhakti and what it looks like. And then the qualities of one who is engaged in that process of bhakti, what that looks like. It's like getting your GPS out. You put in the destination and you have to make so many lefts and rights. Sometimes you run into a lot of traffic. Sometimes it's an open road. There's nobody else on that road. You need to know the destination, and you need to know the means to get to that destination, the things to watch out for, and the things to do. You know, the vidis initiatas. And overall, the purpose is just etayor eva kinkara. The purpose is they're servants of this one principle. These are servants of the one principle. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. See, Rupa Goswami's teachings is the same as Lord Chaitanya's teachings. And Lord Chaitanya's teachings are the same as Krishna's teachings, or the same as Srimad Bhagavatam. There's no difference. One can say it either way. Lord Chaitanya's teachings are the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is the essence of Lord Chaitanya's teachings. And it's the highest of scriptures, and therefore it's the highest of teachings. And that's the purpose that Jiva Goswami set out to achieve and achieved by writing the Sandarbhas. Lord Chaitanya's teachings are the highest. It's a three-part strategy. It's so beautiful. Lord Chaitanya did not write or request others to write commentary on Vedanta Sutra. And followers of Lord Chaitanya know why. And the why is because Sridhar Swami has already written commentary on Bhagavatam, and Bhagavatam is the commentary on Vedanta Sutra, so we don't need. But there was some contention, you don't have commentary. So a commentary was written on Vedanta Sutra, explicitly, verse by verse, but during Jiva Goswami's time, there was no commentary. But, so here is his strategy. As a great Acharya, wanting to show, my teacher has the best teachings. Three-part strategy, really simple. The best of all evidence is the Vedas, and amongst the Vedas, the best is Srimad Bhagavatam. Number one. Two, the teachings of Lord Chaitanya are the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. That's where there was a little more. And then, therefore, Lord Chaitanya's teachings are the highest. Mission accomplished. And details and details and so many details. So here we're just touching on, list number 4 from different parts of scriptural teachings that tell us what are the qualities of a devotee and the best of those qualities of the devotee. Krishna Eka Sharana. And then what is pure devotion? Look, Uddhava is a pure devotee. Just look at Uddhava and you know what a pure devotee is. But he's taking the position as if he's not, for our edification. Krishna is speaking for our edification, so we know what those qualities are. No mistake. Very, very clear. And this is the commentary is vast. It's going to take me about a week to finish this, just these few verses. 4 verses. Because it's very important. Okay, so let's see if there's some discussion. You've been very patient. Congratulations. How old are you? 8? 7 or 8? What's your age? 6. Where'd you get this quality of patience? You got it from your mother? But compliments, you're very patient. Most young boys would be fidgeting like anything. Nice going. Not bad.
6 years.
How many?
6.
You're 6.
And both are classmates.
They're classmates.
His name is Rama and his name is Krishna. Impatient. He's silent like Rama and he's impatient like Krishna.
Okay. Do you like Ramayana? Have you heard Ramayana? And here's a little sharing. There's a devotee, this is for you, Ram. Ram is your name, right? Okay. There's a devotee in China that got recently, in the past 6 months, they got permission from the Chinese government to have Ramayana printed in Chinese. But they have a challenge because the Chinese people and the Chinese government are not going to like too many explicitly God-centered things. It has to have kind of some Chinese characteristics to it. So she's having to go through the whole Ramayana and, adjust the language so that it's going to spread in China, like long term, not just, for a few years and fizzle. That's just a nice service. And she appreciates Ramayana because the people in China will be able to understand it and relate to it better than maybe the Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and other things, because it can be adapted to Chinese culture. And she said, she is that lady that's doing this work. Mahabharat also, but how are you going to get Mahabharat? So there's a series of essays. Ram, listen. There's a series of essays that Bhaktisiddhanta wrote about Mahabharat, about stories and explaining the stories. And it's written in Bengali, and it's never been, that I know of, translated into English. So I have some Bengali translators translating it to English and an editor editing it so we can make it available to the Chinese devotees in Chinese. So they can learn, 101 Mahabharat. Because it's too long and too complicated. But anyway, when we get a little older, I'll share it with you. In English, not in Bengali. Okay, so let's see if there's some discussion. Krishna.
One of the quality Sarva Upakara. One of the quality
Para Upakara. Para
Sarva
means transcendental.
So how can we satisfy everybody?
On the
Like, how
soul
can we-
platform. On the soul platform, please. On the soul platform.
Oh, okay.
On the material platform, not possible. That saying, you can satisfy some of the people some of the time, but not all the people all the time. But on the soul platform, it's very pleasing. Like prasadam. And even chanting. Some people may go, but it's on the soul platform is pleasing and beneficial. You warm? A little stuffy? You're okay. Okay. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you so much for this wonderful class. So Maharaj, you were talking about mind and detachment. So Maharaj, when we have material distress, we try to engage in spirituality and remember Krishna, but due to that distress, sometimes we get distracted.
Not sometimes.
Always we get distracted, and distracted in the sense we are not able to connect with Krishna at
Yes.
that time, and the mind
Familiar.
is in
I'm very
anxiety.
familiar with the territory. So now what to do?
Yes, Maharaj.
There's two places in Nectar Devotion. You'll find a nice answer. Great Hope. You can read that, chapter 10, Great Hope, Nectar Devotion. And it's the longer term is like you get your GPS out, and so the goal is to please Krishna. And I'm not there yet because I'm distracted by something that's disturbing or distressing or something. But one thing I know, Krishna is kind. deep down inside, I'm distracted, but deep down inside, there's a relationship with Krishna. And he's kind. So let me connect with that. Even I'm distracted. So it's not as vibrant and as vital and as palpable as I know it can be, should be, would be. Sometimes it is when I'm less distracted or less disturbed by something. But it's there. Great hope. Ashabhanda in Sanskrit. Asha means desire. Yeah. So it's not material asha, but it's Krishna asha. And the nature of Krishna is he's very kind. And according to us, that faith, you can say it's faith, but it can also be, just a fact that we know it is. It's our, to some degree, our realization, to a modest degree. So in less distressful times, it's stronger realization. In more distressful times, it's a weaker realization, but it's there. So go there. And something that will help you go there, even when it's hard to go there, is sadhu sangha. Then we have strength beyond our strength. And the sadhu sangha doesn't mean they bang you on the side of the head or they tell you, Prabhu, something. Just that their presence gives strength to what's already there in the deeper level. That's what sadhus do. Sadhus are the best, we read it, the best friend. You will not find a better friend than sadhu. Because what do sadhus do? They remind you of Krishna. A friend reminds you of Krishna. So be with sadhus. They don't have to, they don't have to perform. They just have to be who they are. And you'll be with them. It's simple. When it's cold, you can use the example of a fire. When it's hot like this, you can say, stand next to a fan or the air conditioner or something. And you get cool. You get hot when you stand next to a fire. So just be in the association and serve such devotees. I mean, like this. Some distress, and just serve the devotees. And that makes the vibrancy of that Krishna connection stronger. And after we leave, you'll be feeling Krishna so kind. My whole house has become sanctified. And then I'm looking forward to the next sadhu sangha opportunity. And it's that mood of service to that which is spiritual. Serve the name, serve your deity. And there's shelter, there's solace there. There is connection. Yes, distracted by the disturbing whatever it is. That's the nature of this place. If it's not this, it's that. If it's not that, it's 10 other things. And it keeps on. It's the nature of the place. So let me make my connection with Krishna, because I know that's the place of real shelter. You go there to your capacity and take association of sadhus who are going to help you go there, because that's what they're doing. They'll just take you by the hand and let's go. Not like tuck the negative thing under the rug and walk away, but let's go towards Krishna even in this turbulent circumstance. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Two teachings situation. One is like by listening to the lectures, sometimes the teachings are...
Can you speak right into the microphone? It'll help.
Yeah. Is this better?
Yeah, much better. Thank you.
So listening to the lectures, many times the teachings are taking you in a direction that everything is happening by the Krishna's choice. I mean, it's not your choice. Everything is what Krishna chooses that happens in your life. So let it
You're
happen.
saying you're dependent instead of independent.
No, I'm dependent on Krishna.
You're
but-
dependent instead
yes,
of
yeah.
independent. Okay.
I'm just talking about the teachings
And
and how.
I'm editing.
Okay, thank you. And my interpretation of those teachings. So
Okay.
then let everything happen the way it is happening, and you're part of it. Let the things flow.
No, you're still making choices. Even as Krishna is deciding, you're making choices.
Yeah, and that's where the confusion is because.
Why?
Should I try something?
Oh, yeah.
Whenever I try, the things doesn't happen, and then you're like,
Well, you're doing service. Who are you serving anyway?
Krishna.
Service means there's an object of service. And if you're serving yourself and you think this is my interest, so I'm serving my interest, what do we call that? Maya.
Yeah.
Serving to Maya. So don't do that. But in service to Krishna, you make choices. You're not a punching bag or a dummy or, mindless moron or something. So you're making choices. Now, by choice, you may say, in this circumstance or at this particular moment in this circumstance, my hand's off the wheel. I mean, as we were driving here, Avig had his hands off the wheel. But he had a little gizmo in that little Tesla that says it'll drive itself. I was checking it out. I hadn't seen anybody drive in a hands-off machine like that. And then to change lanes, you just put the signal and then it would change lanes. Then they're in the next lane. Anyway, so we have our hands on the wheel, even when we're heading for whatever the traffic is. Things are happening in our life by our arrangement. We didn't arrange all that traffic, but you're making choices as you're driving in the traffic. Or as your life is moving forward. Should you make choices? Of course. You have free will. You don't become a zombie. But it may not happen the way that you're thinking it's going to happen. That's okay. The main thing is stay in the mood of service to Krishna, not my mind. Because we're accustomed to serving the mind. And it's, that service gets us in messy places. You make distinctions. You use the mind in making choices for what's pleasing to Krishna. That's bhakti. Even the circumstances are what they are, and they have no control over the circumstances. You're not an autopilot. Unless you're driving a Tesla. And then you still better be attentive. Okay?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. You told about Shishupal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Shishupal and Dantavakra both are there together, right? Like I never heard about how Dantavakra was killed by Krishna.
There.
Yeah. How he killed? Shishupal was killed like that. What about Dantavakra? Same way?
Chakra.
Where it was happened?
Right outside the western gate of Mathura.
Okay, is that a battle happened or what? Shishupal story we know, but Dantavakra story I never heard.
I'll tell you. You're eager to hear. That's a good quality. Krishna was in Dwarka. He had killed Shishupal. The Rajasuya. Now he's in Dwarka. Shalva. You know who is Shalva, right? Shalva? Towards the end of the 10th canto, Shalva. Shishupal was his buddy. So he had done austerities for Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva appeared. He wanted a machine, a flying machine, that could cause havoc for the Yadus, not just Krishna, the whole Yadu dynasty. So he had a Vimana, a terrorist Vimana. And he came with his terrorist Vimana and his whole army and challenged Krishna. Krishna laughed. He came outside the city of Dwarka, because Dwarka is an island, right? So he came across into the the main land, and had fun having a battle with Shishupal, and chopped him too. It's the end of Shishupal. No, before Krishna went back into the city of Dwarka, who should come but Narada Muni, saying, "Hey, Krishna, guess what? Dantavakra wants to get back too." And he's gone all the way to Mathura to look for you. So Krishna did not re-enter Dwaraka, unseen by others. A chariot descended from the sky, and in a flash, there he is in Mathura. He has really fast transportation. And then battle with Dantavakra, and he killed Dantavakra, Sudarshan Chakra. And then, the Bhagavatam doesn't describe this, but our acharyas do, that after killing Dantavakra, which is described in other Puranas, particularly Padma Purana, what did Krishna do? He's at the western gate of Mathura, the western gate, because that's the direction of Dwarka from Mathura, and nearby is Vrindavan. So Krishna changed his outfit. He put on a cowherd boy outfit and went to Vrindavan. For 2 months, he was in Vrindavan, pacifying the hearts of the residents of Vrindavan, and making arrangements to wind up his pastimes and his associates in Vrindavan and enter into the aprakat stage, or manifestation, the unmanifest. All the Brijvasis were taken like that. The place was empty. Now, others filled their place. It wasn't just like a ghost town. But the eternal associates of Krishna withdrawn. So that's how the Dantavakra part happened.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Anything wrong? No?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Generally we hear from others is bhakti and the path of surrender or taking shelter to Krishna is same, or the bhakti and Sharanagati is different, or bhakti and Sharanagati is same.
What's the relationship between the two topics?
Yeah. Or when we speak in ISKCON bhakti, does it already included Sharanagati in it, or bhakti is separate process and Sharanagati is a completely different process?
Well, it's not a separate process. It's an aspect of. Specifically, bhakti, here's a little history. Other translators, when translating Bhagavad Gita, have translated as devotion. Prabhupada creatively translated as devotional service. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam. Senses engaged with sense objects. It's not just, a mood of love, but it's service. So practical activity, and in that practical activity, there's a what's required in order to do the practical activity unto another subject and object. So Krishna is the object, and the extension of oneself to that object is Sharanagati. And devotional service, you can say it's a bigger category. The subset of that bigger category is the submission unto Krishna. That's an aspect of devotional service. But devotional service means specifically senses doing something with sense objects in relation to the person who's being served. That's bhakti. Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay, looks like we're wound up in the room. Anything online? There's a few.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, what can we think about it? What can we think about if we want to internalize that Krishna is very kind?
Read Krishna book.
There's a continuation. So what do we base our faith in? Krishna is very kind that he'll fulfill our desires, or Krishna is very kind because he'll be my friend, or something else altogether?
Krishna is very kind because he knows what's best to me. Your friend is one who knows what's best for you. The best friend is one who knows what's best for you. And Krishna is the best friend. So it may not be what you were thinking, which is like, what's best for me. But Krishna knows what's best because he's very kind and he does it. And sometimes it's like, hitting you with his elbow, or sometimes it's banging you on the head, or sometimes it's turning you upside down. Sometimes it's different things. Because that's what's good for us. He's our best friend. So when you undergo those things and you realize, maybe not while it's happening, but on the other end, this was the best thing. Krishna is very kind. Now, that's a realization that's bestowed upon somebody who has faith in Krishna and stays with it. Even when the going is tough. That person who stays with it is awarded with the realization of how it is that Krishna was kind by doing that. Okay, that's it. Srila Prabhupada ki